What's up everybody, it's Yank. I'm here with Quilting. Now, in today's video, we are going to dive into the world of AI software. Now, you've probably seen commercials, seen it on the news, it's in your phones, it's in our cars now, it's in our sewing machines. Just kidding on the last one. But it seems like AI is taking over and it's everywhere. But can it do some of the simple tasks in our industry like write patterns, give us suggestions, generate images of those quilts? We are here today to find out whether or not that is possible. If you don't know what AI is by now, it's very simple. You type something in and it spits out information, okay? In addition to that, you can say, create me a quilt, or create me a quilt pattern using layer cakes, or whatever it may be, and it will generate what you want. It's called artificial intelligence. Today, I'm going to put in, write me a quilt pattern using a layer cake and some solid fabrics. Want to give it the best chance possible. And as you can see, it's generating this pattern for me. And it's looking pretty good. I need a layer cake, 2.5 yards of fabric, giving my cutting instructions, my borders. I'm gonna put, can you show me what this will look like? As you can tell, it's generated me an image and a pattern. Now, I don't think this is possible to make with a layer cake. I'm going to judge it based off the pattern, not based off what I think it is, obviously. If all things work correctly, I've got my expectation set for me with this beautiful quilt pattern. Now that we have our expectation set of what it says it can do, we'll see how far we can get with this pattern. And I don't have very high hopes for this. I personally think this is just gonna be a complete disaster, but that's why I'm testing it, and so you guys don't have to. So guys, I went ahead and grabbed the layer cake. I'm going to use Halloween because it's close to that season, and I'm going to use a Halloween layer cake today because we are close to the season of Halloween, and Riley Blake makes a beautiful line here. And then to pair it off, I'm going to use black because it goes with Halloween here. Now, what it tells me to do, it tells me to cut some sashing, and it tells me to cut some 10-inch squares. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 30 10-inch squares out of this. But just right here at the start, guys, the math doesn't seem to be mathing very well, because if I cut 10-inch squares and it's telling me I'm supposed to have a 12.5-inch unfinished quilt block, the math doesn't math there. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut some 10-inch squares. And then it also tells me to cut some 2.5 by 12.5-inch sashing strips to sash my block in the end, which maybe is possible. I don't think so, but I'm gonna go ahead and cut my 10-inch squares first. And then some of you in the comment section, I can already hear you. Does ChatGPT say it's okay to cut towards yourself? No, it doesn't. And then I'm going to cut a 2.5-inch strip. I'm not going to cut it down to size yet because I don't think that it's going to be right. So, and then I'm going to cut out some 10-inch squares. So guys, I got my 10-inch squares like it's asked me for, and I got my 2.5-inch sashing. I did not subcut this down to size because, again, I don't have any confidence in this. Now it's going to tell me how to make a half square triangle. Now, we all know how this works at this point, and it's very detailed actually. I'm actually really impressed by the instructions that it gives. It tells me to draw a line corner to corner like we would, and the instruction on this is absolutely perfect. And it says for me to put these together and sew a 1/4-inch line down both sides. So I'm going to cut that thread, bring it on over here, gonna cut directly on my sew line, or my, you know, I almost asked ChatGPT what that was called. So I'm going to cut right there on my sew line, and I'm going to iron to the dark side like we normally would. And I'm going to trim this to be a 9.5-inch square here. 9.5 inches, that's very important as the pattern says. So I'm going to do this the traditional way of trimming up my blocks. Not much coming off of that, but now that I have that perfectly square, I'm going to repeat this process. I'm going to get maybe 10 of these ready, so that I can move on to the next step of the pattern to see if it's actually going to create the block that we need. So let me go ahead and do that.
That looks nothing like that block.
You don't even know yet.
I saw the picture.
It could happen.
No, it can't. That doesn't even look close.
What's off about it?
That it's a way more complex block than the half square triangle he's making out of the 10-inch stack.
That's why it's going to be magical when it comes together. So guys, like I said, I went ahead and sewed up a bunch more of these half square triangles. Now, this is where things get tricky. So, the expectation of this quilt, okay? Now, I made my half square triangles. It says to take my 10-inch squares, square them to 9.5 inches, and now it's time to arrange the block, okay? Block arrangement. For each star block, you'll need 4 half square triangles and 5 solid squares, which is the first time we're hearing about these solid squares. So I'm gonna grab an orange one, a purple one. So I have some 10-inch squares here that I'm going to just square down to be 9-inch squares really quick. I have my 9.5, I have 4 9.5-inch half square triangles, and it says I need 5 solids, which I have. Lay out the block in a 3x3 grid. Place the half square triangles with the solid triangles pointing inwards towards the star's tips. So it wants a 9x9, or a 3x3, so 9 pieces. It's saying to put one here, and one here, one here, and one here. And then to fill in the blank with the black is what it's saying. And it might be saying that I need to put the color inward, and it specifically says star as well in this. Okay, so let me just double check to make sure I'm reading this right. For the star block, use 4 half square triangle units and 5 solid black squares. 5, 4, right? Layout block in a 3x3 grid. Place the half square triangles at the corners with the triangles pointed inwards towards the star tip. I think I did that backwards. Each completed block should measure 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches. We are currently at 28.5 inches square, okay? It's supposed to be a 12.5-inch square. Repeat this process to make 30 blocks. So just pause here. 30 blocks, which would mean it's a 5x6, right? It's saying that this layer cake is going to make a 142-inch quilt top using the math that we got from this block here. Lay out the block in a 5x6 grid, and to sew our 2.5 by 12.5-inch satin strip to the side. Add borders as well. So this strip to the edges here to separate the blocks, making this quilt even larger. So guys, this is what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to sew this quilt block together, show you kind of the grand reveal there, and then we're going to compare reality versus the expectation one last time. So I'm going to sew my rows together here next. Giving it a good iron. And guys, just like that, our quilt block is complete. Now, just take a second here and admire this beautifully done block here. Just kidding. This right here is what it looks like based off the pattern of how I read it. Maybe I'm reading this wrong, but I cannot seem to get the math to work out, right? So this is reality, this is expectation. This is kind of a bust, right? Myth busted. These AI services can't replace a pattern designer yet. Now, I say yet because who knows what's down in the future, but the reason being is that there's so many intricacies of quilting that it can't account for. But it's not factoring in for your cut down seam allowances, how many pieces are in a layer cake. It can't filter all that yet. Obviously over time will it get better? Probably, but this is also a good plug for all of our pattern people out there that make patterns. Even with some of the best technology on the planet, it still requires human touch. You can't generate something unless it's seen it somewhere else or it's pulling from somewhere else. As opposed to us, we can create something new. With that being said, with the expectation level, I think that's a sick quilt. I think it's a really, really cool quilt. I want to make that quilt. We're gonna figure out how to make that quilt. If I was going to make this, just looking at the picture there, is that quilt looks like it should be done out of jelly rolls, first of all, then half square triangled maybe, or maybe it's a template to be able to do this. We're gonna try to figure that out and make a beautiful quilt. One, guys, if you've liked this video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and don't be afraid to share it with your friends. And as always, guys, we have lots of videos out there showing you how to quilt and do a better job than the AI program did. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.